Another one of my live stream lectures. This is part 2 video in relation to a YouTube course I'm doing. In the topic of this course is the role of the substance abuse professional and the return to process. Check out my introduction to this course. Check out my part 1 video to this course. This is part 2 video of this course. That's going to be a total of 4 videos that make up the total of this course of this valuable information. So now I'm going to present, I've already the lecture on the service agents who play a role in relation to the return to duty process. That's why you really need to check out that part 1. This part 2 lecture is going to also be presenting the role now of the substance abuse professional, who is also a service agent that play a powerful role in relation to the DOT return to duty process for the transportation mode Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. I am a qualified DOT substance abuse professional. I hold the credentials to do this. I've been doing this for well over 24 plus years, and I'm just really excited to pull this course together to impart really my knowledge, skills, and abilities onto the world in relation to the role of the substance abuse professional and all of the service agent that we play a role in relation to the return to duty process. So now, a substance abuse professional, a DOT qualified substance abuse professional, is a service agent that plays a role in that return to duty process. And like I stated, I've been doing this work as a DOT qualified substance abuse professional for the transportation FMCSA, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, for 24 plus years. And the substance abuse professional, the SAP, basically my role is to evaluate employees who have violated a DOT drug and alcohol regulation and make recommendations concerning education, treatment, follow-up testing, and aftercare. That SAP, we also determine if the employee demonstrates successful compliance with the recommendation, education, or treatment. And all of the qualifications of a DOT qualified SAP is also indicated in 49 CFR Part 40 of the DOT regulations in relation to the return to duty process. I'm going to give an overview of the SAP qualifications that substance abuse, or DOT qualified substance abuse professional. I'm going to give an overview of the qualifications that we have to have, which are the DOT regulations 49 CFR Part 40 defines a substance abuse professional as a person who evaluates employees who have violated a DOT drug and alcohol regulation, and again, make recommendations concerning education, treatment, follow-up testing, and aftercare. In order to become a SAP, a DOT qualified substance abuse professional, you need to have certain credentials, possess specific knowledge, receive training, and achieve a passing score on an examination. You must meet all requirements before you can perform any SAP functions, and there's also continuing education requirements. Credentials, you cannot be a SAP unless you hold at least one of these credentials. You have to be a licensed physician, a doctor of medicine, or a licensed or certified social worker, or a licensed or certified psychologist, or a licensed or certified employee assistance professional, or a state or certified marriage and family therapist, or an alcohol and drug counselor certified by the International Certification in Reciprocity Consortium, Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse, which is ICRC, or the National Association of Alcoholism and Drug Abuse Counselor Certification Commission, or the National Board of Certified Counselors at the Master Addiction Counselor level. So you got to have at least one of those specific credentials, along with those other requirements I talked about with the specific training, in order to be recognized as a DOT qualified substance abuse professional. I hold a Master Addiction Counselor credential. I'm also a licensed clinical addiction specialist. I'm also a certified employer assistance professional. So I hold a state licensure. I'm also a licensed clinical addiction specialist. So I'm credentialed in multiple states. I'm credentialed in North Carolina. I'm credentialed in Virginia. I'm credentialed in the state of Georgia to hold these powerful credentials, in addition to meeting other qualifications to be recognized as a DOT qualified substance abuse professional. You know, I'm governed by a board, code of ethics. I have to renew my credential, and it's a lot behind the scene in terms of making sure if you're doing this work, well, you can't do it anyway unless you hold the appropriate credentials. Again, you got to have one of these. You can have more. I got multiple, but you at least got to have one of these specific credentials that I stated in order to perform, to become a SAP, in addition to going through other requirements. Make no mistake. This is not optional. Knowledge. You cannot be a SAP unless you have knowledge of in clinical experience in the diagnosis and treatment of substance-related disorders. You cannot be a SAP without understanding how the SAP role relates to the special responsibilities employers have for ensuring the safety of the traveling public. You cannot be a SAP unless you are well informed about Part 40 pertaining to DOT agency regulations. These SAP guidelines and any significant changes to them. It is important to note that your degrees and certifications alone do not confer you to, it does not confer to you these knowledge requirements. That's why there's additional training and testing that a qualified SAP has to go through. Even though we got those master degrees and those licenses and we're experts at what we do, we still have to go through another layer of training and testing to be recognized by DOT as a qualified substance abuse professional. So it's important to note that your degrees and certificates and licensures alone do not confer to you these knowledge requirements. You must keep current of the DOT agency regulations, FMCSA transportation mode, and the DOT SAP guidelines. So it's a lot, behind this: credentialing, knowledge, training, testing to be recognized as a DOT substance abuse professional. In relation to my area expertise is the transportation mode, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, those truck drivers. So I carry professional liability insurance in the amount of $3 million. I have been doing this for well over 25 plus years. I am an expert when it comes to what I have to do in relation to my role as a DOT qualified substance abuse professional. We are also one of those service agents that play a role in guiding people through this process. Real talk, people. I have to answer to all of my credentialing boards. I have to abide by the DOT federal guidelines. So I make sure I am in compliance. Real talk. This is a huge responsibility when you're talking about these service agents, in particular, that role of the DOT substance abuse professional. Like I said, I've been doing this for well over 25 years. I got the knowledge, skills, and the credentials to do what I do, and is seen as an expert in relation to a qualified DOT substance abuse professional for the transportation mode, the FMCSA. Real talk, people. Training. You cannot be a SAP, a DOT qualified substance abuse professional, unless you have received qualification training that is centered around those DOT federal regulations in relation to the FMCSA return to duty process. The qualification training must include 9 required components specific to section 40.281C of Part 40 of the DOT regulations in relation to the return to duty process. And we are tested on that. I have to renew those specific qualifications every 3 years. Real talk, people, it goes deep. You know, with what I'm presenting, make no mistake, all you're getting is kind of like a overview, but this goes deep in terms of the responsibilities and accountability for all of these service agents in the role we play in relation to the DOT return to duty process. Examination. In relation to the examination that SAP have to take. Examination. Following the completion of all of that training I have to do on top of my credentials. I have like I said, I have a master's in addiction counselor. I'm a licensed clinical addiction expert. I'm credentialed in 3 different states: North Carolina, Virginia, Georgia. I'm credentialed at the state level, the national level, the international level. All those different boards I have to report to, in addition to the examination to become a DOT qualified substance abuse professional. So, following the completion of your training, you must satisfactorily complete an examination. The examination must be given by a nationally recognized professional or training organization and must comprehensively cover all the elements required for the qualification training. Please be aware that DOT requires these training or professional organizations to have their SAP examination validated by a test evaluation organization. So I'm tested on those regulations. I'm tested on the federal regs in relation to those other service agents, the MRO, the drug laboratory, all of those other service agents in terms of their responsibility in addition to my responsibility. And then I have to apply and know those the FMCSA transportation mode federal regulation in relation to the DOT return to duty process. And I have to renew that qualification every 3 years at that level, not counting all of my credentials at the state, national level, and international level also. So it's deep, people. And that's one of the reasons why I have to maintain professional liability insurance to protect my credential and to protect my business in the amount of $3 million. Real talk, people. Continuing education. That qualified substance abuse professional, and this is just at the DOT qualified credentialing piece, qualification. Continuing education during each 3-year period following satisfactory completion of your training and examination. You must complete ongoing or specific professional development hours specific to performing SAP duties, meaning that continuing education. But mind you now, that's in addition to ongoing continuing education that I have to do for all my other credentials at the state level, international level, and international level, ongoing CEUs, re-credentialing, renewing my credential, renewing my professional liability insurance, staying abreast of all of the science of addiction, ongoing CEUs, So I'm spending well over $2,000 a year in maintaining my CEUs, maintaining my credentials, and maintaining my professional liability insurance in the amount of $3 million. That professional liability insurance has to be renewed every year. Many of my credentials have to be renewed every 2 years. Some of my credentials have to be renewed every 3 years. So every year I'm re-credentialing something in order to stay abreast of what I do in this field. Real talk, people. Limitations. Limitations in relation to the DOT qualified substance abuse professional. You, meaning me, any DOT qualified substance abuse professional, must abide by the geographical limitations applicable to your credential when performing remote evaluations. I don't do remote. I see all of my DOT cases face to face because it's too many particulars behind the scene that I got to make sure I know who is in front of me. For DOT qualified SAPs who want to do remote, knock yourself out. Marie Holiday, if you want my service, you're going to get in front of me because I know that there's too much involved. Real talk. So limitations. You must abide by the geographical limitations applicable to your credential when performing remote evaluations. You must not conduct an evaluation that exceeds your geographical limitations. So if you got a client who needs your services and they live in Alaska, but you don't hold the addiction credential in Alaska, then you cannot see that client. That's, even though I'm credentialed in North Carolina as an addiction expert, I'm credentialed in Virginia as an addiction expert, I'm credentialed in Georgia as an addiction expert. So if I were to do remote evaluations from an ethical and legal standpoint, I can provide services to those individuals who reside in Georgia, Virginia, in North Carolina. However, I only see people in Georgia, my home office, face to face, real talk, people. But that's just kind of a description of what they mean by limitations. If you are a DOT qualified SAP, say for example, and you are only credentialed in the state of Georgia, you cannot provide these DOT services to someone who lives in California if you do not have a California credential. Real talk. That is going outside of the scope of your limitation, and you can lose the credential you do have. So limitations. You must abide by the geographical limitations applicable to your credential when performing remote evaluations. You must not conduct an evaluation that exceeds your geographical limitations. I do not have a New York addiction credential. So if a person needs my services and they are based in New York, I can't do nothing for them but refer them out. Unless they want to travel to Georgia, because my home office is in Georgia. I got my Georgia licensure. Yeah, I can evaluate you then. But if you ain't willing to come to Georgia and you're behind live in New York, then I can't help you. Because my Georgia credential or my North Carolina credential or my Virginia credential, I'm credentialed by in the field of addiction. I answer to a credentialing board in those states, so I can provide services in those states. Real talk. So if you are not aware, if you are DOT qualified substance abuse professional, which you should be aware, if you are not aware of your geographical limitations, you need to contact the organization that provided your credential, that governs your credential. But if you are credentialed, you're behind no if you ain't got a credential in a particular state. If a person is seeking your services and you ain't got no credential, if you know you ain't got no California credential and you only got a Georgia credential, you're behind no, you can't provide services for a client if you ain't got the credential in that state. That's the code of ethics. That's code of ethics 101, people. Real talk. So be aware of your limitations as a qualified substance abuse professional. Bottom line, SAP fundamental responsibility. I don't care where you're doing. If you are a DOT qualified substance abuse professional, the SAP fundamental responsibilities to do what we do. Your fundamental, and if you are a substance abuse professional, want a little bit more clarity on your role in this process, pay attention to this piece right here. The SAP fundamental responsibility. Your fundamental responsibility is to provide a comprehensive assessment, substance abuse assessment, and clinical evaluation of employees that have violated a DOT drug and alcohol testing regulation, to determine what level of assistance the employee needs in resolving problems associated with alcohol use or prohibited drug use. The assessment and evaluation must be performed face-to-face at your discretion and may be conducted either in person or remotely. Anybody who called me for services, because I have a home office, I see my clients face-to-face. I do not do remote in any shape, form, or fashion, because I know the seriousness behind this. Real talk. And I got to have them in front of me. We're going into that contractual agreement. I'm explaining that contractual agreement. I'm getting a signature. I'm getting signed consent to do anything. Real talk. And in the world of remote and dealing with all this sensitive data, it's too many ways that a confidential data can be breached when you're doing all this remote work. If they can breach, if people can breach a bank, if they can breach confidentiality of a bank, if they can breach confidentiality of a hospital, if they can breach the confidentiality of the government, what would make you think that they can't breach the confidentiality if a DOT qualified substance abuse professional is doing all this remote work? What would make you think that they wouldn't be able to breach the confidentiality of work you're doing remotely when you're going into all of that sensitive information of a client? You're gathering their demographics, you're doing a thorough, comprehensive evaluation and assessment. You're getting a lot of personal information to formulate a recommendation. And if you're doing all that remote, what would make you think a person can't breach your computer? Real talk. But if you're doing everything face to face in real time, people, that kind of eliminates all of that. I'm just here to tell you. Like I said, I've been a DOT qualified substance abuse professional. I've been doing this type of work for well over 24 plus years. I got the credentials to back it up. Like I said, the credentials I mentioned, you don't have to have all of them, even though I have multiple credentials. But you do have to have certain ones and go through additional training and testing to be recognized by DOT under the federal guidelines for the return to duty process, to be recognized by the Department of Transportation, to be able to do what we do as a service agent in relation to a qualified DOT substance abuse professional return to duty process. So again, I want to state that this is, I believe, part 2, or is it part 3? No, part 2 of my substance abuse professional return to duty process course that I'm pulling together. I'm really excited in regards to be able to share my knowledge, my skills, my experience, my expertise in relation to my role in relation to the SAP DOT return to duty process. Make no mistake, people, I'm known as an expert in the field of addiction. I have worked long and hard in terms of conferring my credential, doing the work, working shoulder to shoulder with medical doctors. I'm on top of my game. And this is information, the correct information is needed. The bottom line, the role of all service agents in relation to the return to duty process is to keep the traveling public safe, to ensure a truck driver is not performing the essential functions of their job, drug impaired or alcohol impaired, behind that wheel, because it can be your mother, father, sister, brother, or someone who's traveling on that road who could be hit by a impaired truck driver, and that can cause catastrophic loss. Real talk. That's where I come in, and that's where all of the service agents come in to do what we do to keep the traveling public safe. So that's all I have. Make sure you check out my introduction. Make sure you check out my part 1 to this course. I'm really excited in regards to the direction I'm taking my channel, the direction of this substance abuse course. Put any questions you have in the comment. I will always respond to my comments. And that's all I have. Simple, fast, simple fidelis, and I'm going to leave you in the care of your own conscience. Have a great day.